The final battle in your fantasy story is not always its most critical moment. Sometimes it's the moment your hero is utterly alone, broken, and has no reason to go on. Now, unfortunately, too many stories fumble this kind of scene. They either invent a convenient rescue, or have the hero find some inner strength that feels totally unearned. And that's where you lose the reader. After analyzing hundreds of stories and real-world survival accounts, I've discovered how a strange psychological quirk holds the key to making these moments feel real. It's called the third man factor, and it's a powerful tool that allows you to give your character a helping hand without breaking your reader's trust. So let me show you what this phenomenon is and how you can weave it into your own work. In 1916, Sir Ernest Shackleton and two of his men were making a desperate last-ditch trek across the uncharted glaciers of South Georgia Island. They were starving, frostbitten, and hallucinating from exhaustion after their ship, the Endurance, had been crushed by polar ice, leaving the expedition stranded for over a year. By all accounts, they should have died. But something strange happened on that glacier. Years later, Shackleton confided in a journalist that he had the overwhelming sensation that they were not 3 men, but 4. His second in command, Frank Worsley, independently confirmed the same uncanny feeling. He felt an unseen benevolent presence walking alongside them, guiding them and giving them just enough encouragement to take the next agonizing step. And this experience is not unique to them. Solo sailors have reported a phantom helmsman taking the wheel in a storm. Fighter pilots have described a guiding voice in their ear after the radio has gone dead. Even astronauts have felt an inexplicable presence with them in the void. All of them describe a mysterious, incorporeal companion appearing in moments of extreme isolation and distress. And this is the third man factor. What appears to be a supernatural visitation is in fact one of the most fascinating coping mechanisms of the human mind. You see, your brain is first and foremost a storyteller. When faced with a reality too bleak to process, it doesn't just shut down, instead it writes a new story. It creates a character, a helper, to get the protagonist through the scene. When your own internal voice of hope has been silenced by trauma and despair, the brain essentially creates a new messenger. It outsources the job of encouragement to a presence that feels separate from the self. Now, this presence created here has 2 distinct and common characteristics. First, it is almost always benevolent. Second, its guidance is subtle. The function of this presence is to restore hope, not to solve the external problem. And that distinction is absolutely critical for us as writers. Consider a trapped hero, and we need to give them a reason to keep going on. Now, a common flawed practice is to resort to a deus ex machina, a god from the machine solution. We've all read it, and maybe if being honest, we've all been tempted to write it, or even done so. The forgotten god who suddenly answers a prayer for the first time in 1,000 years. The long-lost grimoire that just happens to fall open to the one specific counterspell needed. Or the giant eagle that shows up with no real narrative setup whatsoever. Readers instinctively reject this. It feels like the author is cheating, breaking the established rules of the world to solve a problem they wrote themselves into. Taking this route shatters the reader's trust because the solution comes from outside the character's journey, robbing them of their agency at the most critical moment. Now, the third man factor, on the other hand, that one offers a far more elegant and powerful alternative. You can think of it as a deus ex anima, a god from the soul solution. It provides the same crucial moment of intervention, that same sliver of hope, but its origin is entirely internal. The power of this approach is that it transforms a plot problem into a profound character moment by reframing the source of the rescue. Because the third man is a projection of the character's own psyche, it feels earned. The solution is no longer an external force just dropping from the sky. The solution comes from the character's past, from the lessons they've learned, the love they've felt, and the promises they've made. Now, nailing those core promises at the center of a character and the irreversible choices they lead to is the heart of a great character arc. It's a process I personally call building emotional waypoints, and you can get my free starter kit via the link in the description below. For the moment though, you only need to understand that this psychological framework gives you, the author, permission to create a moment of profound, almost magical hope that does not feel like a cheat. The third man factor allows you to externalize your hero's internal struggle in a way that is tangible to the reader, making their comeback feel not just possible, but emotionally inevitable. But now that we understand the psychological machinery behind this phenomenon, How do we translate it from a real-world survival story into a powerful tool for our fantasy narratives? Now, I've developed a simple 3-step framework to construct this encounter, ensuring it lands with the emotional weight it deserves. Step 1 is to isolate them. You see, the third man is not a casual visitor. It is a psychological antibody, produced only under conditions of extreme duress. This means you must earn the right to use this tool by putting your character through absolute hell. They must be truly existentially alone. Even in a crowd, they can feel psychologically isolated, completely drowning in the hopelessness of their situation. Step 2 then is to break them. The character must be at their breaking point, a state that transcends simple exhaustion or sadness. This is the moment their internal narrative of who they are utterly collapses. It's the brave knight finally admitting he's a coward. It's a wise sorceress realizing she knows nothing. And it's the duty-bound heir accepting that their kingdom is already lost. Only when the character's known self has failed them can a new presence emerge from the ruins. Which leads us to step 3, define the projection. Because this presence is never random. It is a direct reflection of your character's deepest needs, unresolved conflicts, and foundational relationships. So your job as a writer is to decide who they project. Whatever the choice, it must be rooted in their established backstory. A character driven by a promise to their dead father will likely project that father. This moment of projection is fundamentally a choice. A choice to survive, to hope, and to continue. Step 4 then is the ambiguous encounter. This is the most critical part. The power of the third man factor lies in its ambiguity. The character, and therefore the reader, should never be 100% certain if the presence is real or a hallucination, because this is what keeps the agency with the protagonist. Let's look at a quick contrast here. In a flawed version, the ghost of the hero's master literally appears in a flash of light and says, "The secret passage is behind the tapestry. Use my old key." This is clearly a Deus Ex Machina. The ghost solved the problem while the character did nothing. A superior version to this scene would have the hero slumped against the wall, bleeding, the door barred. At first, the character just feels a sudden familiar warmth on his shoulder, as if his old master were beside him. Then he hears a whisper in his mind, a single phrase his master always used to say, "Look for the seam." As a result, the hero's eyes dart around, and for the first time he notices the faint outline of a hidden passage behind a tapestry. The presence didn't give him the answer, it reminded him of how to find it himself. This is a subtle but very profound distinction. The third man doesn't act upon the world, it acts upon the protagonist's will. We see a masterful example of this in Star Wars, when Luke Skywalker is speeding down the Death Star's trench. At that moment, Luke is alone, broken, and about to fail his mission. Then he hears Obi-Wan's voice simply saying, "Use the Force, Luke." Now, is this a ghost? Or is it the memory of Luke's training, his own latent power externalized as a voice he trusts? There is no 100% clear answer here. It is ambiguous. And it works perfectly, because Obi-Wan doesn't fire the torpedoes for him. He just gives Luke the one piece of encouragement needed to trust himself. We also see the same in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. When Harry walks into the forest to sacrifice himself to Voldemort, he uses the Resurrection Stone. While the shades of his parents, Sirius and Lupin, appear, they do not cast a spell or fight for him. They simply walk with him, giving him the one thing he needs, the courage to face death alone. Their presence is the ultimate expression of Harry's own internal strength, projected as the love that has defined his entire journey. So what does this phenomenon truly teach us? Well, it teaches us that the hope isn't an abstract feeling, hope is a haunting. It is the presence of the past, the lessons, the love, the promises, made tangible in a moment of crisis. And with it, you now have a powerful tool to manifest your character's internal world at the lowest point, turning a cheap rescue into a profound character revelation. But this does raise a critical question as well. If a character's mind is powerful enough to project a companion in a crisis, how does that same mind shape their reality every other moment of the day? Well, this is exactly where many stories fall flat. Because we give our characters a fascinating history, like a lifetime of training as a soldier or a scholar, or maybe even an assassin. But then their moment-to-moment perception of the world feels generic. This means there's a disconnect between the character we imagine and the consciousness we actually write. So to avoid this yourself, watch this video here next, where I break down a psychological phenomenon called the Tetris effect, to ensure that your characters remain true to who they are at all times.